I never thought a leaky sink could lead to a turning point in my life. It was one of those mundane household problems that most people would brush off as nothing special, but for me, it became the beginning of a journey that would shake the foundations of my marriage, force me to question my choices, and ultimately change who I was as a person. My name is Rachel Thompson, and I live in a small, quiet neighborhood in Asheville, North Carolina. I'm in my early 40s, married for 12 years to my husband, Mark. On the surface, our marriage looked fine. 2 kids, a nice home, and a comfortable routine. But deep down, something had been missing for a long time. We were more like polite roommates than partners. Conversations were short, mostly about bills or schedules. Affection was rare, and when it did happen, it felt forced. Mark was a good man, dependable, hardworking, but emotionally distant. He had always been more focused on his work as a corporate manager than on our relationship. I had learned to live with it, telling myself this was just what marriage became after so many years. The day it all started was a Wednesday morning. I was rinsing some dishes when the kitchen sink started leaking, not a small drip, but a steady stream of water pooling under the cabinet. I tried tightening the pipe with a wrench, but the more I messed with it, the worse it got. Mark was at work, and I knew he wouldn't be home until late, so I decided to call a plumber. That's how Ethan Carter entered my life. Ethan wasn't your typical plumber stereotype, no baggy overalls or gruff attitude. He was in his mid-30s, clean-cut, with kind blue eyes and an easy smile. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, like someone who actually enjoyed what he did. When he stepped into the kitchen, he crouched down by the sink and got to work without much fuss, chatting casually as he worked. "Looks like your pipe's been loose for a while," he said, glancing up. "Not a big fix, though. You caught it before it got worse." We talked about little things, the weather, local restaurants, my kids' school. He laughed easily, and I found myself laughing too, which felt strange because I hadn't really laughed with anyone in a long time. When he finished, he wiped his hands and said, "All done. Should be good as new now." But instead of rushing off, he lingered a moment, asking if there was anything else around the house that needed fixing. I hesitated, then mentioned a cabinet door in the pantry that had been loose for months. Mark had always promised to fix it, but never found the time. Ethan fixed it in 5 minutes. Over the next few weeks, I found myself calling Ethan again, first for a clogged shower drain, then a broken light fixture. It wasn't that I couldn't have found someone else, but there was something about the way he talked to me. He actually listened. He remembered little details from our conversations, things like how my daughter had a piano recital coming up or that my favorite tea was chamomile. One afternoon, after fixing a leaky bathroom faucet, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with me while I made coffee. Somehow, the conversation drifted to more personal topics. I told him how Mark and I hardly spoke anymore, how I sometimes felt invisible in my own home. He didn't judge me or offer quick fixes, he just listened. "That sounds lonely," he said softly. That simple sentence made my throat tighten. Because it was lonely, and I hadn't said it out loud to anyone before. After that day, I started to realize that I was looking forward to seeing Ethan, not just because of the repairs, but because of the way he made me feel seen. It wasn't romantic, at least not at first. It was just human connection. But things shifted one rainy Saturday. Mark had left early for yet another work conference, and the roof started leaking in the laundry room. I called Ethan, and he came over with his tool bag, water dripping from his jacket. As he worked, the storm rattled the windows, and I made us both hot tea. When he finished, we stood in the laundry room, listening to the rain. He glanced at me, and there was something in his expression, a mix of concern and warmth. "You deserve to be happy, Rachel," he said quietly. It wasn't a confession, and it wasn't a promise. But it was the first time in years someone had said those words to me. From that moment, I knew my life was at a crossroads. I didn't want to betray my vows, but I also couldn't ignore the truth. I was deeply unhappy, and if I didn't make changes, nothing would get better. Over the next month, I started small. I joined a local community book club. I began taking morning walks by the river. I even told Mark that I wanted us to try counseling. At first, he resisted, but after a long conversation, and maybe sensing that I was drifting away, he agreed. Ethan didn't disappear from my life, But our dynamic changed. We stayed friendly, but I no longer called him for every small repair. When I did see him, it was casual and there was mutual respect. Mark and I began working through years of silence, slowly rebuilding some trust. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was a start. Looking back now, I realize Ethan didn't take me away from my marriage. What he did was wake me up. He reminded me that I was still a person with feelings, dreams, and the right to be heard. The leaky sink was just the beginning. The real repair happened inside me.